Hello, I'm Lee Wind. I'm the Director of Marketing and Programming for the Independent Book Publishers Association, and you have arrived at IBPA PubU Online. The idea behind today's webinar is to explore the idea that it is maybe time to reimagine book promotion. And we have the amazing Helena Brantley here to talk to us about that. And I just want to shout out to Ingram Content Group, who is sponsoring today's webinar. And we have Bailey Davis from Ingram, who is here to say howdy and to just, so I'm going to let her do that. Bailey, come on up.
Hi, thanks Lee, thanks Helena. Really excited about today's webinar. Really thrilled to be a part of Ingram sponsoring such a really relevant session and important topic. And for those of you who might not know about Ingram Content Group, Ingram provides publishers with comprehensive publishing and distribution solutions in the book industry, giving publishers of all sizes an advantage in the rapidly changing marketplace. We offer print-on-demand services, so you have no overprinting, unsold copies, or warehousing. Whenever a book is purchased, we print it, we ship it direct to the consumer or to your warehouse, wherever you need it to go. It's pretty simple. We also get them where readers need to find them. Ingram is able to make your content available to more than 40,000 retailers and libraries worldwide. We're really proud to partner with the indie bookstores, big chains, libraries, and schools, as well as major online retailers, including Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Apple, and a lot more. We develop and maintain these relationships for you so you have more time to do what you do best, which is to create great content that readers all over the world need. Again, we're really excited to sponsor today's webinar. I think this is going to be a really great session. And if you want to learn more about how Ingram might be able to help you with your content reaching readers, we've included a link in the chat where you can actually have us reach out to you directly. But with that, I'm really excited to turn it over to Helena and Lee on something that I think we can all learn something from today.
Super, thank you, Bailey. Yeah, and you know, I just want to make sure you're aware that Ingram has offered IBPA members some amazing discounts on setting your book up and revisions. Like there's some serious money savings by leveraging your IBPA membership. So make sure to check out the member benefits handbook for the scoop on that. All right, so let's jump into it. So Bailey, you can turn your video off, and thank you, but you're welcome to hang out and listen. And Helena, let's jump in. So reimagining book promotion, the tips, tools, and strategies to connect authors and readers. Tell me more.
Well, thank you. I think folks should know that, Lee, you represent IBPA really well. I think your invitation to me, I should tell folks that I don't know much about IBPA. And your invitation was so thoughtful and considered, and so I'm really happy to be here, and I appreciate you, inviting me in the manner and the spirit that you did.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So before we get into it, and I kind of talk about, and kind of set up the game plan as I see it for the next hour, I want to just share with you that I worked on a book this year with 3 authors called Another Way, Living and Leading Change. And they have this practice that's designed to encourage, creating hospitable space for meetings and gatherings like this. And one of the things that Stephen Lewis, the author, often talks about is, before we get to the business at hand, especially, as we're living through a pandemic, that there's real value in pausing, taking 60 seconds, and just allowing our minds to catch up with our bodies. So I'm just going to encourage us, before we get into the business, to, there's a lot going on in the world. There's a lot going on in our respective lives. So let's just take 60 seconds to be together in silence. Thank you. All right, so welcome everybody. Thank you. You know, I realize there are people here from all across the country and from Canada, so welcome. So here's what I want to do over the next hour. I want to tell you a little bit about what I understand about IBPA members and sort of author publishers, this has been new to me. Oh, you're welcome, Nancy. I want to talk a little bit about my approach to book promotion and what informs that approach, which may be different than what you're familiar with. And then I want to introduce you to Kenya Dubois. This is my attempt to create a fictional case study to talk with you about the ways in which I would encourage author publishers to think about the way that they're promoting and thinking about promoting books. And we'll talk a little bit about tactics then and now, and then we can open it up for Q&A. So here's what I know about you. Oh, you know what, Lee, I can't hear you.
Sorry. While there are no slides, I just want to let everybody know that in addition to the video recording of this that you will all get via email on Friday, there is a handout. So you will get that as well at that time. So take notes, absolutely, but do know that you are going to be getting a handout later that will walk through some of the main points that Helena is going to share today.
Right.
Sorry, keep going.
Thank you. No, that's a good point. Yeah, no slides today. And we'll see how that goes, right? We'll see how that feels at the end, if that was a good experience for people not to actually have the slides. So what I understand about IBPA members and sort of author publishers more general is that, A, you are all small business owners, many of you. You kind of have an entrepreneurial sort of sensibility, and you are navigating the realities of living through a pandemic, as we all are. And so I think specifically what that's meaning is adjusting to virtual only events, missed pub deadlines, snafus and issues with supply chain, the idea that what's dominating news everywhere is, all related to the pandemic. I know that many of you are Jack and Jill of all trades. So in addition to creating the content, you are running publishing houses. So you're doing all that's involved with promotion and business development and marketing, and that's a lot.
Yeah, and 55% of our members are also juggling authors and illustrators and other people that are creating the works. Even if some of the work is their own creation, they're really indie publishers as well. So yeah, there's a lot.
That's a lot. I know that you are also, if you're creating content right now, you're competing with everyone. So you're competing with traditional publishers, you're competing with some of the peers in your space, for attention, for dollars, for shelf space, for media coverage. And I also know that you are often painted with one brush, right? So there can be sometimes a difficulty in distinguishing yourself from others in your category. And I think what's also true is that there is in many cases a stigma that can sometimes still exist in terms of, independent book publishers and content. So a little bit about me and before I get into Kenya and sort of how I want to hopefully be helpful in how you're thinking about promotion. So if you remember nothing about me, what I hope you'll remember is that I'm a person who loves ideas. I am fueled, excited by the many different ways that people are talking about engaging and introducing ideas into the culture. I work primarily with nonfiction authors and subject matter experts and with nonprofit organizations. I have 24 years of really diverse communication experience, right? So I started as an agency publicist, which meant I worked on teams that were thinking about how to help companies promote their products and services. I worked for a marketing and advertising agency in DC and really got to work with, essentially I was the liaison between clients and the creative teams, which I loved. I also ran the small nonprofit communications office of a nonprofit, which was fun because I really was committed to the mission of the organization. And as a result of that, I was recruited to work for HarperCollins in-house as a publicity director for 4 years. And that's really where I found home. Like once I began working with authors and helping them to think about how to promote their ideas in the form of books, that's where I was just, I remember just sort of feeling like, wow, I've really come home. I think it's important for me to also talk about public relations versus publicity. I think the definition that I use to describe the public relations that I am focused on is public relations is about how do we create awareness and credibility and exposure that can lead to engagement and sales. Whereas I think, especially in my time, working in-house, oftentimes the focus was just on publicity, which meant media coverage, primarily. There's some events and some other things, but primarily when we talked about publicity, we were talking about media coverage that leads to sales. And I think that the challenge with publicity, and this is pre-COVID, this is not because of COVID, is that the emphasis is on the short term. Lee and I were talking earlier about, if you come out of traditional publishing, that you usually have 3 months to decide if a book is going to work, which is so problematic to me, especially for people who have taken such time to create market study, research books, and this idea that you have this tiny little window with which to sort of make it before it goes away. It was always very problematic to me. And then the other thing about public relations is the toolkit is larger, right? So it's this idea that I'm not only focused on what's happening on the book page or even the art page, that there are so many different ways for me to be thinking about how am I going back to that goal of creating awareness and credibility that creates the environment for engagement, meaningful engagement and sales. So I think that's another thing, when we talk about reimagining book promotion, I mean, a big part of what we're saying is we're slowing things down and giving things a longer life and not feeling so narrowly defined by like three tactics. Okay, so
Can I just chime in and say that something that you just said, I feel is really, really important, and I want to highlight it for everybody. You were talking about helping authors promote ideas in the form of books. That it isn't that you're promoting the book itself. And can you just speak about that just a tiny bit? Because it feels like I want to put like a neon arrow around that.
Yeah, so I mean, part of what we're seeing is that books are, one way to create good content, but audio is another. In some cases, visual is another. So for me, the emphasis is, and you'll see this, when we talk about some old practices versus new practices, it's really important to be conversant with the ideas that you are promoting. And so oftentimes, we see book as products, and people, I love seeing these pictures where people, I mean, I get it. I see the value in sharing people what your idea package looks like. But I think when you're thinking about what are the sort of universe of ideas of ways to promote these ideas that are available to me, it's really exciting. And you're not limited to, just thinking about, the ideas in a book form. Does that answer your question though?
Yeah. I mean, it was more just sort of like, yes, it's more than a book. It's right. Especially when you're trying to get engagement and excitement, it's not just about the book. It's about the ideas that the book are part of.
Right. And a good example of this is when people promote books on, pretty much any social platform, oftentimes the emphasis is on the cover. And, unless it's someone, that I know, I want to know, I mean, it's nice to see what the package looks like, but give me something, tell me something about what this book is about. And you often see, I do this a lot on my Instagram page and even on Facebook on Fridays, I try to do, I try really hard to participate in the Friday Reads hashtag. I love the packaging of a book, and especially if you have the money to hire the best of the best, that's great. But what I'm really interested in, what I think book people, particularly nonfiction authors, but not only, that's just tends to be the people that I work with most. We're just hungry to know, why should I care about this thing? And so sometimes, you can read a book, and I do this a lot when I'm reading, which I'm always reading, is I will on the margins, highlight or put the IG for Instagram by it, and I'll say, wow, this is such a great way of capturing what I think this book is trying to say. And then when you pair it with other hashtags, then you can kind of help find a community for it. But it's, to kind of bottom line it, it's this idea of moving beyond just who wrote the book or what the name of the book is or who published it, but what are the ideas in this book that are going to excite me in some way. So that's it's a big part of how I think about promoting books, because again, for me, it's so much about, what are you saying? What do I need to know about what you've done in the world, who you're talking to, who you're researching with, that's going to help inform, the way I think about, and why I should care about it, because there's 12 million books I should be concerned about. So let me just say that let me just say that I was trying to figure out, Lee and I had talked, and we were trying to figure out, like, how do we make what I have to share actionable and interesting, right? And so one of the ideas was, and I was going back and forth on this, and I thought, well, what if I created an author publisher based on what I know, which again, I don't know a ton, but I know, the IBPA website is very good. I think I mentioned to you earlier, Peter Goodman, I think it is, who does your audio. Fantastic. Those podcasts are really rich. I listened to the one with Victoria Sutherland from Forward, which I thought was really insightful. I also listened to one with there's one of your IBPA members, I think her publisher has Cardinal in the title, Cardinal Publishers. She's, I think, a young author.
Maria Dismonti, I think she's here with us today.
Oh my goodness. Well, I have to say that segment with her and Peter was so insightful. If you're looking for some case studies on how even within your membership, folks are using social media, I think in a very thoughtful way, I would encourage you to listen to that episode with, I'm sorry, I'm blanking on her name. Maria. So Maria, the one with Victoria Sutherland, and then the other one, just as an FYI, that I found really insightful was just Peter Goodman sort of ripping on, post-COVID, what does this all mean?
That was interesting. I like that one too. Yeah.
So I just wanted to share that it was helpful for me to kind of get a sense of your organization and how you're, engaging with and speaking to and addressing concerns within your membership by listening, going to your website, and then obviously listening to the podcast. So Kenya Dubois, she's the CEO of something called Baby Boomer Publishing. And so this is a conceptual case study. We'll see how it goes. So a little bit of background on Kenya. She is, she's a baby boomer. She had an idea for a collection of books that were catered to, oh, you're welcome, Maria. Sorry, I'm just seeing some of the things as they pop up. So if I miss yours, forgive me, they pop up kind of quick. But what was I saying? Okay, so Kenya Dubois, she had this idea for publishing books for baby boomers who have active creative lives. That's who she had this whole sort of slew of ideas of books and content that she wanted to create, because she found the offering for baby boomers in this particular category to be very limiting. So she tried to go the traditional publisher route, completely frustrated, burned her out, figured that's not going to work. And she's a researcher by nature. So she went to IBPA events. She also went to BEA, and she went to PubWest conferences, because she was trying to get a handle on, like, this is a new kind of community for me. I know what I want to do, but I'm new. I'm going to humble myself enough to know, how does this industry work? And then I'll sort of decide how I'm going to come out and create my own thing. So she identified, as I said, a big hole in terms of books that were written for and by, baby boomers who are, have all kinds of creative pursuits, writers, painters, poets. And so she decided to, she registered for a bunch of the big 5 newsletters. She's trying to get a sense for, how are publishers promoting books? How are they talking about their books? How are authors themselves promoting? So her whole thing was, let me understand as much as I can. And so one of the things that really informed how she thought about her own sort of author publisher world business was this idea of the importance of cover art design, titles, and interior page design. So very quickly, she knew that she was going to have to learn. She didn't know how to do any of this stuff. So again, going to the different conferences, meeting different people, she learned, okay, here are the best of the best, that's available to me in these different sort of parts of book promotion or of publishing. Yeah. She also learned things like how it would be important for her to always try and ask someone to forward the book, like to create a forward as a way of showing that there were people who were interested, significant people, sometimes just regionally so. But she was always trying to figure out, how do I create a community of people who are interested in these issues? And so she's always on the hunt for people that are writing about issues related to retirees and baby boomers and, sort of different generations. So she publishes 2 to 3 books a year. Her big title for 2021 is Writing for Life, Boomers, Millennials, Gen Z, and the Writing Life. This is a collection of curated essays on the writing life across different generations. Kenya's books look good. They are inside and out. The step one was to make sure that these books, look good. So a friend suggested that she talk with me. And so I just want to run through sort of the process of how I was encouraging her to think about this title come winter. So the first thing, and this may seem obvious, but the first 2 steps are going to inform everything that happens afterwards. And that is the publisher probe and discovering and defining the landscape. This is a diagnostic phase, which is tremendously important. This is what the big houses do, and I think sometimes a too narrow way. But so here are the questions that we discussed. So, obviously, what is the book, Kenya, and why does it exist? And she explained to me that the contributors are cross generations, but their commitment and their practice of writing as a way of life is really what defines who they are. And so she created this community of people, again, across generations who are writers and artists. The primary audience, she says, are baby boomers, obviously. She knows that she's looking for people, with disposable income. That's not everyone. She's also trying to reach Gen Xers who are constantly looking for gifts for their parents and ways to keep their parents and their loved ones who are retired engaged. I asked her, what does she know about what her audience is reading? So she told me everything from, many of them are still reading newspapers and columns, and some are reading blogs. Some are reading blogs. They're listening to lots of radio. She said lots of AM radio, which was interesting. AARP, obviously, the Sun magazine, Utni Reader, Yes magazine. So she has a real handle now on where her audience, where they're getting their information and what they're interesting. Oh, Kenya's fictitious. So I didn't see who that was, but yeah, this was just an approach of the mind.
This is the conceptual case study.
Conceptual. So anyway, the point is thank you, Jerry. So the idea is, this is step one, right? She has to be so clear on who she is, who she's trying to write for, what she knows about them. Then we're going to move into discovering the landscape, right? So we're just going to get deeper into, how is Kenya learning about her audience? She's not assuming things, she's learning them. So for example, she decided Facebook is the platform to play on for her, because research shows that that's where her audience is, and that's where she's hanging out. So she's engaging, once, twice a week, sharing information there. She's paying a lot of attention to the comments and trying to get a sense of what she can learn. There's a lot of demographic information that can often be found in comments everywhere, not just on Facebook, but in other social media channels. And as a publicist, I spent a lot of time reading through the comments. She knows about the YouTube channels. Another key audience for her are association and organizational email editors of e-newsletters. So there are a lot of association and nonprofits that are often really hungry for content. And so, we kind of tend to focus on, big, large national media, but oftentimes we miss an opportunity to go straight to the people that we're trying to talk to by, finding who are these editors at these, some of them are large, some of them are smaller associations and nonprofits. This process can sometimes yield 30 or 40 different outlets to be in touch with in different ways. So this kind of changes the idea that the primary or only way to build lists is media. I mean, we're seeing a lot of shakeout in media. I think we're going to continue to see a lot of shakeout and consolidation in media. And Sherry, I saw your question. Let me finish this, and I'll address that question about how do you reach them. Let me say, most organizations and associations have in-house marketing people. Sometimes they're listed on the website, and oftentimes when you look under the publications for different organizations and associations, you will find that the VP of communications or the communications director is also the person that edits the newsletter. And then you'll see the publication name, and sometimes you can ask them if they'll send you a copy, and then sometimes they're available online. So it's a matter of just spending the time to identify which 5 or I wasn't sure how to stand out. I think you're just asking a question at that point, because remember, at that point you're dealing with in-house communications people. Again, many of them are hungry for content. For a lot of them, it's like, oh my God, this e-newsletter is it hangs around my neck. I have to get this thing out. Where do I get the information? So a lot of times, if you present yourself, you're honest with who you are and what you're doing and why, and you've spent some time on their website, and you can speak to how your book speaks to their audience, they're going to want to take a look at it, which means sending a review copy. And then from there, you could ask, hey, would you be interested in either a Q&A with my author? Would you be interested in, chapter 2 has a wonderful section that would speak directly to your audience. Would you be open to having, 800 to 900 word excerpt? Or you could say, is there someone that reviews books for your e-newsletter? In some cases are, and in other cases there aren't, but they might say, hey, there might be someone on staff who would be willing to do that. So the idea is that you know enough about how your content speaks to their constituency, and then it often just becomes a matter of, are they interested? And can you make life really easy for them in terms of providing the content? Assuming, they usually have their own vetting process. They're going to want to look at it. They want to know who the author is. They're going to want to know a little bit about you, which is why we'll talk about in a minute, the website is so important to be a good representative of who you are and what you do. Okay, so, yes.
Would that be an opportunity as well to have the author write an essay or something, or a guest blog post or something for that organization?
Absolutely. I'm working with, just as an aside, I'm working with it's an independent book publisher. It's kind of an interesting long story, but we have found that because the space that she's publishing in is early literacy, young readers, many of the large early literacy nonprofits are so hungry for content, and she happens to be a publisher of color, and they were very interested in not only highlighting her, but also highlighting her young authors. So yes, this is absolutely, an example of how you could present yourself to organizations and associations that represent, your audience. And yeah, I think this is the future. I really do believe. I mean, there's always going to be, media outlets, and there's value in that for platform building and all of that. But when I think about smaller, independent, really focused content creators, I think sometimes getting the media, not relying on the media, but going straight to the source and the audience. This, I think, is really going to be, a lot of the way that the future, I think, of how we promote content. Um, okay, so the other thing I want to just tell you is that I wanted to say a quick word about Goodreads, especially for authors and publishers. So the reason that I would really encourage you to have a presence and engage on Goodreads is because I think it represents, as close as we can as the broadest, one of the broadest online book communities. And so I think because you're authors, you're also readers. And I think part of what happens is that we forget to kind of almost like deposit into the community that we're part of. So for example, if you're an author, why not have a profile on Goodreads where I could learn, for example, what you're reading, what you've read, what you like. It's also a way for you as an author to sign up for some of the free Goodreads book giveaways and kind of learn how that process works, what you like about it. And then as an author, Goodreads is a great place to see how other publishers are promoting their content. I love Goodreads because, and I know folks have sometimes a hard time with it being Amazon owned now, but I still think that I love it. And I also love to see like what my authors are reading. So for example, I get usually once every week or at least once every 2 weeks, I get these posts about what Roxane Gay is reading. And she just happens to be someone who's writing, I really appreciate, particularly her op-eds. And so I'm very interested in what she reads, and she's a great reviewer. Like she cuts to the chase and she basically tells you if she likes the book, why, and if she doesn't, why. So I think this is part of like being part of the community that I think when you're an author and publisher, you're going to have more time and certainly interest in both being part of the community, engaging there, but also seeing and learning. It's a really great place to learn how all kinds of publishers how readers are engaging to all kinds of publishers and the presence that publishers have in the form of ads. And, they do some creative things sometimes, when there are new books that are coming out, I'll get an email, which I think is a cool, it's one of the tools. It's not the only tool, it's not the biggest tool, but it's one of the tools. And I feel like there's a certain sense of depositing, but also withdrawing in terms of, this idea of you all who are wearing especially, more than one hat. So the last thing I want to say is, the other thing with Goodreads, there's so much demographical information about certain kinds of reviewers that you can find there that can be really helpful when you're thinking about how are you trying to talk to an audience that may be new to you or, that you don't have a lot of background on. So I love reading. I'm working on a book that's coming out in November, and it's a second book by a woman. Her name is Lee. Gosh, I'm forgetting her Mary Lee. Forgetting her last name, but she wrote this beautiful book about saints. I think it's called Saint Everywhere was her first book, and then she has a new book coming out called Somehow Saints. Beautiful, beautiful book. Before I could even say to the publisher, here's what I think I could do, it was so fun to go and read what all of these reviewers said about the first book and all the information that they shared about themselves. So, you might think a book about saints, okay, that's a completely Catholic audience. No, there were a lot of people who actually read the book and were like, I'm not Catholic, or I'm not religious, or I'm a lapsed Catholic, but there was still, and then they shared what it was about the book that they loved. And that was the experience that I had, in reading the book before I agreed to work on it. It was like, wow, I don't, identify myself as Christian, but wow, there's this the storytelling in the book is really part of the beauty of this book, as are.
So Helena, were you also looking at like the 1-star reviews, or were you only looking at the people that loved it?
Oh no, I'm looking at everything. And in this case, there were no 1-star reviews. There was like this ebullient like love for this book that was so fun. But yeah, I am interested in the 1 stars and what, and you know, I would say that sometimes I get very frustrated with people who do the 1 stars, because I feel like if you're gonna, you know, basically, you know, pan something, you need to explain, in my opinion, why that is. And I think it's unfortunate that a lot of times people, you know, for a variety of reasons, don't have a good experience with a thing, and they don't take the time to communicate why that is. So, so I think I'm always a little suspect of 1-star reviews, to be honest, if they don't give me a case for explaining, you know, why it didn't work.
So interesting, and that idea of sort of like going into the audience that you already have and sort of really understanding them better is something we've talked about in other webinars as well. But this feels like a new spin on it a little bit in terms of like really mining and getting to understand who you can reach. And then what you were saying about associations, I just have to say, I can't even believe how many associations there are, right? There's an association for everything. It's remarkable.
So true. It's so true. There's so many, and that's the beauty. Again, if you're excited about the ideas, finding the audience, whether it's media or not, is really part of the fun. Like I really get excited when I'm like, oh, I didn't know there was a blah, blah, blah of blah, blah, blah. Let's see who they are. What are they doing? What are they talking about? How can we figure? I love that. That kind of just gets me really excited. All right, so I'm mindful of time, and I want to, let me just say a couple of quick things. The other resource, and this might seem obvious, but again, just thinking about author and publisher, the weekly, sometimes they're, you know, every 2 weeks, newsletters that come from your local independent book publisher, I mean, your local independent bookseller, and now more recently bookshop, that's one that I've been paying attention to. Those communications are very, very rich, not just for, you know, who they decide is important or who they want to highlight or even what the events are, but you can learn a lot about language for, and also promotion, design of events. And I worked with Bookline Brooksmith in Boston about a month ago on an event for a book I worked on called This Is One Way to Dance by Sejal Shah. It's a University of Georgia Press book. A beautiful book about an Indian American woman's experience, you know, with many things, identity and race and location and culture. I mean, it's a collection of essays. It's really beautiful. But the reason I mention this is because the trans literature series, that is a sort of offshoot of Bookline that does all kinds of events around immigration and immigrant stories and issues. It's started by this woman, Suchi. It's wonderful. The curated conversations that they have there are just really wonderful if you're interested in that kind of thing. If you on my Instagram page, but also if you just hashtag search "This Is One Way to Dance," you will see some of the really, I think, very effective event promotions so on social media. And thank you. I'm at Helena Brantley on Instagram. And I think this is really important. I think how we market and promote events, in the same way as I said to you, Lee, the way you invited me, the way we market and we promote our events is telling us a lot about who we are, what we value, the attention that we put into these events. And, you know, one of the things that occurred to me this morning, I was walking and I was like, you know, this may be obvious, but the fact that you have a new book is not enough to generate and justify, rather, an event. Like, real care and thought needs to be put into, you know, how we create these events. So, for example, with the Sejal Shah event, Kathy Park Hong, who's an Asian American, Korean American writer who wrote an incredible book that I'm forgetting the name on because I'm not sleeping well. But she wrote this book, and here's what was cool. So Kathy's book came out like a month and a half before Sejal's book. They're friends. Sejal led the Q&A for Kathy, which ran in, I think, Granada or something, one of those literary magazines. So when we were talking with Brookline about this launch for Sejal's book, we were all brainstorming on a call. And it was like, well, why don't we ask Kathy Park Hong, who, by the way, book was flying off the shelves, there's a great piece that, what's the New Yorker writer, Gia, I'm forgetting her name too, did on Kathy Park Hong. And so anyway, that's what the conversation ended up being. It was Kathy in conversation with Sejal, but then Sejal had a nice relationship with the Asian American writing organization, Kundiman. So we invited her to come. She did like an opening and a welcome. It was, I thought, we had technical glitches that were not, through no fault of our own. But I thought the conversation was really, really rich and meaningful. And I think we had, our goal, I remember, was to sell 35 books. I think we sold like 32. And I think there was something like maybe like 200 people came or something like that. But the point is, I was promoting, author was promoting, bookstore was promoting. And it was really it was bigger than, this person just has a new book. There was a lot of care and thought into the design of that program. We had, a flow of events for how we were going to. So the point is, we're going to have to slow down on how we're creating these events and why, and how we're curating them so they're really adding value, because there are 12,542 million books out there that are new every day, it feels like. So we're really going to have to think hard about how do we look to our community, people who are also have books, and how do we create events and experiences for people that really show that, again, we're looking for credible ways to engage and to create a climate that leads to book sales. And here's the other thing. Sometimes the book sales may not happen at the actual event, but I'm going to tell you that if you create a good event and people like it was a good use of their time, the book, they might buy the book, the next time they see it X. It may not happen at that time, but I really think we have to shift the way we're thinking about this idea that if we didn't sell, 100 books because 100 people came, that somehow we failed. Other opportunities can be born out of that aren't necessary.
I'm so glad you said that, because I was thinking about, okay, so you had 200 people and you sold 32 books. There's one way of looking at the math of that and being like, oh man, we didn't even pay for the event. But there's another way of looking at it, which is that you had 200 people who are now going to be evangelists for the idea behind the book. And those 32 people who attended the event and bought the book are there's the possibility that they could become your street team, right? Like your super fans.
That's right.
They're so engaged, and like that's exciting, because it's like I think that we think so often in this very limited view, right? Like the opening weekend, the box office weekend for the book, and I think that the event is an extension of that. Like that's 200 people that you probably now have on an email list, right? And that will be interested in hearing from the author.
That's right.
So
I think this idea of slowing down and being really intentional and focusing on quality of things versus quantity of things is going to be really important, not only because I think it makes good business sense long term, but also because we're not robots. And if you are a person who has a family, parents, right now, for the next 6 to 8 months, it's gonna be, these are really tough times, and I think that this affords us the opportunity to just sort of think about the intention of what we're doing in a different way. So I think I think what I should do is to kind of maybe, if you're okay with this, Lee, just because I know that we're coming up on time, we've got 15 minutes. The one pager that I sent, I hope it will be helpful in just kind of giving you an outline for how we can think about these. And there's also old and new tactics. I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory. I don't know if I need to go through that. Maybe what I should do, you know, unless folks, you know, feel otherwise, maybe what I should do is maybe just open it up. How do you feel about that? And just see if there are questions that.
Yeah, we can circle back if you know, we can circle back to that. But let me start with a question from Abby, who asks, how does this work with fiction? You know, they particularly do literary fiction.
Yeah.
You know, what are the things that where's the overlap? Where's the synergy?
You know, it's a good question, Abby. And, you know, I don't have a lot of experience with fiction. And I'll tell you a story that I think helps explain why. I think people who promote fiction, I just have such a special appreciation for them. When I worked at HarperCollins, so I worked for Harper One, which was the religion and spirituality imprint of Harper that's based in San Francisco. And I remember the publisher, I think it was the associate publisher at the time, was really excited about fiction. And we were all like, wait, but we don't really know how to do fiction. And so I think that the editorial team acquired, like, you know, maybe 5 or 6 books, you know, the first season. We struggled so much because we didn't know how that world works. So I think there is a way to apply this idea of slowing down, but I'm sorry that I can't give you specific examples because I just don't have you know, I don't have examples that I can point from my own experience. But I'm trying to think. There is I'm trying to think who it was. I feel like I'm trying to think about the fiction stuff because I monitor a lot. I mean, I pay attention to a lot of different things. I'm just trying to think about who. Yeah, I'm sorry. I wish I could be more helpful.
Can I chime in? So one of the things that I've really been aware of is that, you know, because IBPA has the media outreach program, which is sort of trying to do something in between nothing and, you know, hiring a publicist for thousands of dollars a month for a long contract. So it's like a $350 program. And the idea is that we send a customized, we do an email about the book with like the story behind the story and a little bit about the author, trying to like kind of pitch the story to media people. And then we try to customize the list. And this comes up a lot that people are like, well, what about for fiction? And every book has themes and audiences that are that you're thinking about. So like you can lean into, you know, if what you've written is this sort of family drama, there's a lot of media that cover interpersonal relationships, and you know, there's a lot of parenting associations, or there's a lot of, you know, dating, you know, advice sites. And so it's sort of like depending on what you're doing. Yeah, somebody here is chiming in. David is saying fiction can talk about important issues and themes, like The Handmaid's Tale as an example. So
Yeah.
again, it almost like the idea behind the book. It's not the book, right? It's every book has an idea behind it. So maybe you lean into that.
I think that's a really good point. And as you were talking, what came to my mind, which I hope will be helpful, is when Exit West came out, Mohsin Hamid, that I remember listening to him talk with Pamela Paul on the New York Times podcast. This was many years ago because my kids were really young. I remember it so vividly. And the way he talked about, it wasn't the book. It's kind of like what you were saying, Lee. Their conversation about what this book was, the themes, I was arrested. I remember I went out. I used to live around the corner. I used to live in Oakland. Walked right around the corner to Walden Books, bought the book, and started reading it that day. It's a phenomenal book, by the way. So I think part of the challenge here for Walden Books, yes, totally rocks. Part of the challenge is having authors that know how to talk about these books in ways that take it out of the, you know, here's what the book is about. It's like you really, you know, there's an art to this. I really do believe, you know, to how you talk about it. And so again, that also comes up in the press materials, you know, in ways that, you know, as Leah is saying, tease out what the bigger idea is. But I think the point that's really worth paying attention to, especially because there's so many podcasts, right, that you can really find to speak to the themes that are in different fiction. But really investing and encouraging the author to learn how to talk about these books in ways that just excite you. And I think listening, I would say it's worth finding and listening to that interview with Pamela Paul, the editor of the New York Times Book Review, and host of the podcast. I think I haven't listened to the podcast for a long time, but that interview with the author of Exit West was just incredible. I still remember it. It just moved me away. So I think that would be the point that I would offer is, to really encourage and give examples for your authors to think about how they're going to talk about the content that raises it above just what the book is about.
Right. It's like play with the idea as you're talking about it, and then the book becomes interesting because these people want to engage more with the idea. Right.
And the book it's an incredible book. If you #search, I actually wrote about it twice on my Instagram. If you #search Exit West, you'll find it and a lot of the love for this book around the world. The author is based in Pakistan.
Cool. So Mike, who I think Mike Rato, asks, is there a good / suggested way to reach people for a virtual event? Like, so you have your virtual event set up. Are there any tips you found that work well to get them to show up?
Yes, I think the first thing is making sure that you as the publicist, the author, the publisher, the venue, the bookseller, or whoever the venue is, that you all have spoken. Like, this is a big deal, right? So you're a team. And a team, has a good coach. And as the, PR person, that's kind of your show to manage. So I think if you all can get together, lots of really fun ideas can come, when you are hosting a conversation with all of these people. And then the other thing, so that's the first thing, make sure that you guys are talking, you're sharing ideas, you kind of feel like you're in this thing together. But two, I would say, pay to have someone design very good promotions for your event so that it looks good and that you're not telling me 55 million things, but you're just telling me the basic information and you're exciting me. An example of an event, it was an Instagram live event with Elizabeth Gilbert and Brittany Cooper like last month. It just blew me away. I would not have known. I'm a parent. I have, I run a business. I've been dealing with a sick parent. Like, I don't have a ton of time to just like be on Instagram all the time, right? But because both Brittany Cooper and Liz Gilbert, they had these very well produced promotions for these events, for this conversation that they were having, I actually reposted again. You'll see it on my Instagram page. I was so excited because I'm fans of both of their books that I scheduled it in my calendar. And so I think there are people who just kind of have a lot of time, God bless them, that can, be on Instagram and find out about events or even the same thing with Facebook Live. But I think for the majority of us, tell me in a clean way, in an attractive way, what it is, who it is, and what I can expect there. I think, again, the trans literature series TLS through Brookline Booksmith does a really good job of this with their promotions. They apparently, one of the booksellers is just like this amazing graphic artist, and he does these really wonderful things. So I think those are the two things. Yeah, make sure you're meeting, you're sharing ideas, you feel like you're a team. And then afterwards, I think is worth saying, having a nice picture of all 3 or 4, however many people together, and then saying something about it. If there's a video recording, being able to drive people to it afterwards with a nice thing, with a nice promo, I think is helpful as well.
That's great. That's sort of like the follow-up, right? Like to keep people engaged in it. And that, it's interesting. When I've done certain events online, some people can attend live because the timing works, but they have lives, right? So the recording, right. Sometimes you have way more people wind up watching the recording, which will be true with this webinar right now as well.
Right. And I have to say one thing. I apologize because I think Mike's question, you had tagged me, I think, on Twitter, And I didn't do, like, I think when you're working on something with someone, you should help promote it. And I apologize to you because I didn't even like help retweet, and I could have done more even to let people know about this event. So I think it's important when you have people that agree to, to give of their time, if not their dollar, to give of their time and their talents, that I think that it's a nice thing to ask them to be part of the promotion as well. And with enough time that people can put it on their schedule. So I'm going to publicly apologize for not doing that.
No worries. So a question from Simone and Dawn, who backed up, who upvoted the question is, how can you engage and motivate some of your authors to participate in social media, Goodreads, etc.? I keep pushing them and telling them that it's important to be virtual, connected, and online.
Yeah, it's a good question. It's a good question. Don't tell them, show them. Everyone I find authors, when they see other authors doing things well, it can be a motivation for them. So rather than saying, and this is, I think, a common problem for people, like, I'm trying to get my author to do X, I would shift the strategy from talking and just sending clips. Here's an example of an author that does this really well. And I will tell you, this is also the future. And I know for a lot of, and I include myself in being an introverted person, shy, introverted, awkward. Everyone can relate to that. But if you have spent your time to write a book and go through the process of publishing it, you must learn how to get comfortable promoting it and talking about it. It doesn't have to be that you're on all three platforms. I'm a big proponent. Pick one and know it well. And again, engage. It's this idea of depositing and withdrawing. So you're not only asking, but you're engaged in the community. So I think, yeah, stop telling them, show them. And then when you're showing them, ask them questions. Do you have any questions? Put them in the position of having to answer you, as opposed to the passive way of just, can you do this? I think you have to find the pain point. And I'm willing to bet that a big part of the pain point is, I am uncomfortable talking about myself in this public way. What most people need to understand is that whether you're doing it on social media or whether you're doing it, at a crowd, 500 people, it's a variation of the same thing. And since we will not be meeting in person for the foreseeable future, we're going to have to move out of our comfort zones. And so that's what I would suggest. It's a hard thing, I know, but keep showing them and keep studying on their behalf what's working well, who's doing it well. And there are
the examples that you've given are, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to speak over you.
It's okay. No, it's my fault. You were saying?
No, I was just, the examples that you've given are really great. And I think that the idea of like having a mentor, having a mentor promotion, having a mentor text, having a mentor, like what's working really well, and look at that and then you learn from it. I want to say that Terry raised her hand virtually to share that having, with the suggestion to this question, saying have one-on-one mini trainings with your authors and teach them how to do it. Create content for them to use, like an article on your website. I agree, but I find that if I spend a few hours going over how to do it, just the basics, my authors are more motivated.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think that's right, Terry. And I also think that in some cases, the PR person may not have the experience or the time. And you might discuss with the author sharing to bring somebody on board to help. I mean, there are a lot of people who have a lot of skills. I mean, I work with a guy named Joel Drucker, and he is a phenomenal media coach for, getting authors. He's an author himself. He's also, like, oddly enough, a tennis historian. But he's phenomenal. And he comes out of the agency world. He's actually a former client. But he does this really, really well. So I think there might be some value in talking with people who know how to do this well. And right now, the climate is such, I was talking with Joel recently, a lot of people are willing to, like, to really work with you on fees. You know, I wouldn't let the fear of the cost of investing, whether it's a graphic designer or a you know, a media, someone who's a media coach or a media trainer even, I wouldn't rule out those options, because there are a lot of people who are looking for work and who are also just, you know, in the spirit of trying to be helpful, you know, willing to be flexible in their fees. And so I would encourage that. Yeah.
Cool. We're going to run 5 minutes over because there's a couple of
That's
more little things I want to get, just to let everyone know. We will be doing a recording. It will be sent out to everyone by the end of the day. I'm going to try for the end of the day today. And because I'm taking the next 2 days off.
Oh, good.
And now that's recorded for everyone for all time. So that was weird. So I just want to say that Maria has put her hand up as well and says
Sure.
that they have a 6-week author training for those signed in that year. We go over different content each week and it's over Zoom so they can get to know other authors in our company. We also hire speakers once a quarter for author training.
That's
Maria,
wonderful.
that's great.
That's
good practice.
really, really, I mean, congratulations, author, publisher. That to me is one of the ways that your community can continue to distinguish itself from other content creators broadly defined. I believe there's such an opportunity for people who are, you know, independent minded, entrepreneurial, really invested in the work that they're doing. You know, this is a real opportunity amidst all of the very real, you know, grim realities. I don't want to, you know, minimize that. There is a lot of opportunity here. So, and I think Maria is the one. You should go and listen to her podcast. I think it's Peter Goodman. I was so excited to hear about it. So what she's doing, and also was just personally interested in you know, the books that she's promoting. So yeah.
I'll send those links out with the recording so everybody has them handy. So in the last few minutes we have, use the chat. If there's something you're most excited to do first, let us know, or your biggest takeaway. And then I'm going to tell you that in the background there, I was running a random number generator because we have 3 winners of IBPA swag from this week's webinar. And it's something I'm not in the office, right? I'm at home. I kicked my husband out of the study so I could do the webinar. So, but my colleague Terry, he works alone from the IBPA office these days, and the rest of us work from home. So he'll put together a IBPA, pack of fun stuff, and we'll be sending it out to Roshan Perry, Trevor Weiser, and Juliet Cutler. So congratulations.
I know Roshan Perry. That's so great. She's here in the Bay Area with me.
It is a small world after all.
It's a small world indeed.
So I want to share, as people are putting their last things in, I want to just, you know, Helena, if you have any final sort of closing thoughts you'd like to share for our attendees, and then we'll share their biggest takeaways, and then we'll wrap it up.
Oh, that's so great. Yeah, no, I love this question of, you know, final takeaways. I think, you know, what I would just say is I read the newspaper just about every day. I still get the printed newspaper, and like more than I need to in terms of digital, you know, newspaper subscriptions. And my house is flooded with all kinds of content, right? News and information. And what I know is that there's just, I think there are a lot of challenges ahead. You know, I think for our industry, I think for our world, you know, and I think that when you love what you do, I think that's a certain kind of blessing that not everybody has. And I think that if you're going to be a person who's creating content and promoting it and trying to get interesting things out into the world, I don't know, I think it's such a beautiful, I think you have to love what you do. This is hard work. Not a lot of people here are, you know, getting wealthy from this. And so I think there's a real joy in just trying to discover, in the many different ways that there are to discover now, you know, how to do this well. I will say 2 things in parting. One, there's a book called The Art of Gathering. You know, as for all of us who are kind of thinking about how we're going to be continuing together for the foreseeable future virtually, Priya Parker's book, I think, is just a wonderful read. But more relevant is this new podcast that she has with the New York Times called Together Apart. And she also has a really wonderful newsletter. I get 5,842 emails, I feel like. And a lot of them are e-newsletters. Hers, when it comes, I always stop and I read it start to finish. And I think because she is really offering some very helpful information about ways to just gather better, even while we're apart. And then the other,
Can you tell the name of it again?
yeah, so her name is Priya Parker, and I think it's priyaparker.com. You can go and just sign up for her website. That's what you'll get prompted from her and all kinds of other stuff. But I think at her website is where you'll find her e-newsletter, which I just think is really rich. I don't always agree with everything she says, but I just love how she's challenging me to think about how I use my time with other people. That's the first thing. The other thing I would recommend, there's a guy named Josh Burnoff, and he's an author of a book called Writing Without Bullshit. I think he is one of the smartest people out here blogging about writing, and he has a couple of posts. He has that's like a daily blog post. I don't know how he does it, but he's a mathematician by training, which I find so interesting. But he has several posts about independent, like self-published books that I think are really worth people knowing about. And I even think he would be someone that would be great for you to think about an online webinar. He's a bit curmudgeonly at times, but I think his content is awesome. And he writes. He's been like a ghostwriter for different people. A lot of this is business books that he's writing on. But I think he's a really sharp writer and thinker, and he's contributing a lot to how we think about putting ideas into the world in a meaningful way. And so, right, yeah, check out. I will say that there's a particular post that he has 3 secrets for effective book launches. It's a really good, I think for this community, I think it's a really good, those case studies are, I think, likely to be very insightful and helpful.
Cool. Thank you so much, Helena. I want to give one more shout out to Ingram, who helped sponsor today's webinar, which is very helpful because we are a nonprofit, and that helps. So I'm just going to add that information in the chat if you want more information about them. I did put in the link to the Writing Without Bullshit.
Thank you.
Helena, while I'm sharing the stuff about that people have said that is their takeaways, would you be kind enough to put in the link to Priya Parker? Because I don't know how to spell it. And then I'm just going to say out loud some of people's takeaways, because I think this is a community moment that feels really awesome. So here's some nice things. Shelley says, love that you're emphasizing building authentic community around meaningful ideas and engagement. Thank you. Yay. Maria says, that was awesome. The launch, Kayleen says, thanks so much, Helena. This has been really helpful. I feel less overwhelmed thinking about this. You've given me some ideas of directions to go in. Shelley says, thank you so much. I'm excited to share your ideas with my authors. Delia says, I'm definitely going to start doing trainings with my authors. I've got several folks who know one another, and I think it would help them all help each other. Yeah, I like that idea that everybody, you're a community, so you help each other. Dawn says, I'm going to reach out to the more reluctant authors and help them more. And Simone is saying that Nolo creates 500 articles monthly. Wow. And Roshan says, thank you for the swag and that was wonderful. Abby says, the pause, the goal of sales is like the hare. The turtle makes connections along the way. The long run is what we need.
That's right.
Gardeners.
Okay.
Not even for us, just in the neighborhood. Emily says, for me, the idea of promoting ideas and content over the physical book and then training authors as a cohort how to promote is really appreciated. Maria says, I'm going to work on more images for our events and having someone who can do them, make them, instead of me trying to Yeah, I really feel like there's some stuff we can do ourselves, but like hiring professionals is so much about like if no one's going to pay, so this is what I always say about like the book covers, right? Like if no one's going to pay me to design the cover of my book, I have of their book, I have no business designing the cover of my book, right? Like there are some things you got to pay
Right.
professionals for. So yes, and then oh, Delia said, my authors and I have discussed banding together to do a group podcast that would help us reach out to audience and do cross promotion for and with one another. Rather than approach the process as competition, we want it to be collaborative and supportive for one another to use our collective networks to expand audience for us all. I really think that's a great idea, Delia, because here's the thing we all know. When someone finishes a great book, what do they want next? They want another great book.
Yeah.
So
And to talk about it.
Yeah, we're not in competition with each other. We can help each other and lift each other up. Thank you all so much.
You know what? I had a little trouble with Priya Parker sending.
Just email it to me, and then I'll share it in the link with everybody else.
Sure, it's PRIYA Parker.com.
PRYIA.
Yeah, PRIYA Parker.com.
Sorry, I flip things sometimes.
Sorry about that. I don't know why I can't figure out how to do that here.
No worries. I want to just say a big thank you to Helena for sharing your expertise with our community. For everyone watching the recording, thank you for hanging with us for this hour. I hope that you got stuff that was informative and actionable out of it. For everyone that attended live, a special thank you to you, because this is a community moment as much as an educational one. We're very grateful for you. Stay safe, everybody.
Thank you so much, Lee. Thank you, everyone.